Hey, everybody, and thank you so much for coming back and tuning in to another midweek Bible study with the West Main Church of Christ. It is an absolutely gorgeous day here in Tupelo. I hope that you all have taken advantage of some just incredible weather that we've had over the last couple of weeks. Again, thank you so much for just dropping by with us. If you're new to this series, know that we do these every single week. We're in the middle of a really awesome series right now, which actually is going to finish up, I think, next week. So be sure to go back and watch some of those, and I'll plug that in a second. But if you are new, if you're coming back, you understand and you know and expect that we start these things off with what I call the fun thought of the week or of the day. And we're getting to the point of all this kind of craziness that you probably have started to see a lot of cliches. The light at the end of the tunnel. Something like that. What doesn't kill you will make you stronger. Those type of things. And so I thought it would be interesting today for your fun thought of the day. I'm going to give you my top 5 most annoying cliches of all time. Okay, and I've ranked these from least annoying to most annoying. So 5 all the way up to the single most annoying cliche for me personally. And so I just want to go ahead and throw these out there. And let me know if you agree. Comment on Facebook where you find this video. Let me know at some point what are your most annoying cliches. Number 5 for me, that's the pot calling the kettle black. Okay, this one made my list just because my mom said it a lot growing up. Sorry, Mom, I love you. But she said this all the time. And I always said, I understand what the expression means. I get it, all right? But pots and kettles don't talk. Pots don't call kettles black. In fact, most of the pots that you probably have at home are like stainless steel or like some funky, fun design from Pioneer Woman or what's her name, Joanna Gaines. So that one just doesn't make any sense, and it annoyed me growing up because my mom said it a lot. So anyway, that may be some foreshadowing for what my life was like. Number 4, better safe than sorry. Again, I understand where this expression comes from, but I don't like this one. I don't like this cliche because, and I get that a lot of people really enjoy this one, but for me, better safe than sorry doesn't make any sense because it's not as though those two things are mutually exclusive. Just because you spend your entire life being safe doesn't mean that you'll never be sorry, and just because you take some risk in your life doesn't mean that they won't work out. So I don't like the expression better safe than sorry. That's number 4 for me. Number 3, I kind of alluded to it a second ago. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I thought about flip-flopping these with number 3 and number 4. And again, I understand where this comes from. But there are some things that won't kill you, but they still leave you with, lifelong crippling effects. And so I don't like that cliche, this idea of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It also makes it kind of glorify this idea of wanting to go through something just for the sake of being stronger. And quite frankly, there are some things that I just don't have any desire to go through, regardless of what the end effect would be. And I understand that sometimes that's good for you, but for me, just because I may be a stronger mental person, if I lost my arm and had to learn how to do everything with my left hand instead of my right, doesn't mean I want to do it. So there's that. Number 2, and this is where we get kind of like in the nitty gritty, right? This is the number 2 most annoying cliche to me of all time. Ignorance is bliss. Okay, this is just dumb. Not only is this just not a smart thing to live your life by, but it's actually incredibly dangerous. Just because I'm ignorant of what the speed limit is doesn't mean that it's going to be blissful when a police officer writes me a ticket. Just because I'm ignorant of where the edge of that cliff is doesn't mean that I'm going to have a blissful ride on the way down. I really, really, really don't like this. On top of all that, Christians are told in the Bible that you're not allowed to plead ignorance on the day of judgment. So ignorance really doesn't help you in any way, form, or fashion. And so I really, really dislike that cliche. But it is only my number 2 because my number 1, the number 1 most annoying cliche of all time, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Let's think about this for just a second. Okay, just think about it. If it's your cake, it's specifically designated for you, why on earth are you not allowed to eat it? Okay, is there like some law that I'm missing from way back in history that like if you made a cake you weren't allowed to eat it because it was like bad luck or you'd be cursed like the black cats are walking under a ladder? I just don't understand it. I don't. Okay, I understand kind of like the whole metaphor, beggars can't be choosers type thing, which is another cliche that could have made this list. But I just don't get it. In fact, every single time you're at any kind of special event, period, where a cake is designated for somebody, like a birthday or a wedding, an anniversary party, graduation party, don't they normally get the first piece of cake? Okay, this makes no sense. None whatsoever. And I really, really dislike that cliche. So there you go. Those are my top 5 most annoying cliches of all time. And so now that we've gotten that out of the way, I'll give you guys a few seconds just to kind of calm down, get your blood pressure back to a normal level, because I know you guys got really worked up over that, right? Not like me. Anyway, so I do want to, guys, let you know that, like I said before, we are in the middle of a series, and it's an awesome series, to me anyway, that we've been going through called Real Spirituality. And we've been diagnosing some of the all-time Pixar movies and looking at some main themes and how we apply those to our lives as people and as Christians. I will go ahead and I'll tell you guys, like I think I mentioned earlier, this is the second to last week. So next Wednesday is the very last week of the Real Spirituality series. Okay, if you haven't been keeping up with these, you can find every single one of those at the West Main YouTube page. Just go to YouTube, type in West Main COC Tupelo, and you can find every single one of these that I've done in this series so far. We started with Brave, and we're working all the way down to this week, which is, you guys ready? Cars 3. That's right. We are taking a look at the end of the Cars trilogy that Pixar did throughout the course of the years. And as much as I enjoy the first one, I'm not a big fan of the second one, I'll admit it. But Cars 3 just kind of closes out a really, really solid trilogy for me anyway, and we'll allude to some of the other movies as we get through this series. But as always, we're going to take a look at 3 things from this movie, from the main timeline of this movie, or main theme of this movie, and how we apply those to our lives, both as people and as Christians. Just with every single one of these series, there are spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, but again, don't let that stop you from watching this. Just go back after you've seen this Devo and check it out, and then be like, oh yeah, that's what Nathan was talking about when he said this. Okay, so I really hope you guys are ready for this, and so without any further ado, let's get started, okay? Cars 3, here we go. Number 1. Who's your enemy? You got to know who your enemy is. And we've hit this a little bit on some lessons past, but we got to know who our enemy is. And for Christians, most of us, we all know, well, we'll back up for a second. With Pixar, right, we know there has to be a main bad guy, right? Every single Pixar movie, there's got to be a main bad guy, because if there's not a main bad guy in a Pixar movie, then what's the point of even having it as a Pixar movie? So in this case, the bad guy's name is Jackson Storm. And if you're familiar with the Cars trilogy, you know that Jackson Storm is kind of like the new Lightning McQueen. He's the guy who is on his way to the top. He's a young, hotshot rookie, and he's trying to push McQueen out of the spotlight. And I guess I kind of forgot to give you guys the brief overview of what Cars 3 is, but like I said before, it's the end of this trilogy, and it basically is accumulating to Lightning McQueen is kind of getting up there in years, and he works his way into this idea of he gets one last race with Jackson Storm to decide what the future of his racing career is going to be. And so Jackson is the epitome of everything that's wrong in McQueen's life. And so Jackson is, without a doubt, the bad guy. And it's hard to say. Like, you don't want to call anybody a bad guy in a Pixar movie, but he is. Let's face it, he is. And so for Christians, our enemy is Satan. And, that's pretty simple, right? According to Matthew 16:23, as well as Mark 8:33, Satan directly opposes the purpose of God. And so we know Satan as our enemy. He's the one that is constantly working against us. And for most Christians, that's pretty obvious. When I say, who is your enemy? That part's pretty obvious. Well, our enemy is Satan. He kind of heads up sin, and that's what we try to avoid. But what maybe isn't obvious all the time is the tactics that Satan uses. And I think that's really important. Throughout the course of the movie, Jackson Storm does these little tiny things that try to get in McQueen's head, where he talks about, how McQueen is such a great racer. At least that's what his grandfather used to tell him. And he does these little things to try to mess with McQueen. And the devil does the same thing with us. He's an incredible liar. We know from John chapter 8 and verse 44, it calls him the father of all lies. We know he's a master of disguise. He's a manipulator. 2 Corinthians 11:14. And he's incredibly crafty. And I think sometimes what we don't do a lot as adults when we're talking to kids or adults talking to other adults is I don't think we give the devil enough credit. Now, don't get me wrong. I think the devil is 100% powerless when it comes to his ability versus God's ability. Okay? Don't get me wrong. I believe that God is 100% all-powerful and can defeat Satan, has defeated Satan, and by raising Jesus from the dead, he broke that grip over death. And so that's very, very important. But Genesis 3, we learn about how crafty and deceptive, that's not, deceitful is not a word. Don't get on to me for that, Chris Johnson or any other English teachers. Deceptive, he really is. And so I think that's kind of an important thing is we have to understand the devil's really good at his job. All of these things combined, this idea of him being such a good liar and a master of disguise and him being crafty, makes him incredibly dangerous. And that's why it's so important for us to be sure that we continue to put in the work. Right? Just because we've been a Christian for a long time, we're like, you know what, I feel now I can coast. That's not what this is about. We have to continue to put in the work. We have to continue to try to get better tomorrow than we were today, be better today than we were yesterday, so on and so forth. We have to do our best to recognize those lies and surround ourselves with the right kind of people so that the devil can't push us out, the same way that Lightning McQueen did in this last movie. Okay, point number 2, the truth is always quicker. And this is a direct quote from the movie. And this is one of my favorite quotes from the movie. But Lightning McQueen and his friend Cruz are searching for some help. And they get into this little kind of restaurant. And they kind of roll up on, because they don't walk, right? So they kind of roll up on some of these great racing legends. Right, some of these unbelievable Hall of Fame kind of people, and they roll up, and Lightning McQueen's like, "Hey, it's nice to meet you guys," and they're like, "Aren't you Lightning McQueen?" And they immediately start giving him grief about all the trouble he's been having, and that to me is really, really funny. And he looks up at them and he goes, "You all don't mince words around here, do you?" And I think his name is Smokey. He looks right at him and he goes, "We find that the truth is always quicker." And that is so true, and that's what's so awesome about it to me at this particular point. In John chapter 4, there's an account of Jesus talking to a woman at a well. We know from Scripture that she's a Samaritan woman, and during this exchange, Jesus asks this woman to go and to call her husband here. And she doesn't exactly lie, but she's not the most forthcoming either. And Jesus says, "You are correct because you said you have no husband." He's like, "In fact, you have 5 husbands." And on top of the Bible emphasizing how important truth is, like from 1 John chapter 3, verse 18, or Ephesians 6, verse 14, Jesus or God, they're always going to know the truth. It's so much easier to just go ahead and put the truth out there, and it's quicker because as good of a hiding things as you think you may be, God won't be fooled. So the truth is always quicker. And then point number 3, what are you willing to give back? For those familiar with the car series, you probably understand or know the name when I say it, Doc Hudson. Doc Hudson was a premier racer in his own day, and he was the guy who kind of took Lightning McQueen under his wing and ended up becoming his crew chief toward the end of the first movie. And if you've seen Cars 3, you remember that the same sort of thing kind of happens with Lightning McQueen. And it's really important to me. Part of our responsibility as Christians is our responsibility to give back, whether that is passing along our faith, like we find in 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 5. Maybe it's passing along our encouragement to others, like Barnabas did with Paul and then Paul did with Titus. Or maybe it's passing on our wisdom, like Jesus did to his apostles, or so on and so forth. Being able to take the experiences, the knowledge that we have as Christians, telling others what God has done for us and being able to pass that on to maybe the next generation, maybe those who need that help, or maybe we do it to somebody our own age because they need the encouragement or need to be brought to Christ to begin with. Part of being a Christian is being able to rejoice with others about what Christ has done in our lives and being able to teach others the Word of God as laid out in Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20. There's no point in growing close to Christ if we're unwilling to give back what He has given to us. So, guys, thank you so much for tuning in and staying a part of this lesson. I really appreciate it. As always, from my West Main family, I have just a few announcements for you. Everybody else, be sure to come back next Wednesday. We'll have the final installment of our Real Spirituality series. Thank you so much. For our West Main families, I don't have a lot of announcements for you tonight. As weird as that may kind of be, we did get an email. All the local youth ministers did get an email this past week. Even though some may be going back to church by the middle of June, they have already canceled the area-wide for June, which makes sense because even if we are able to be back together, depending on what the governor says or anything like that, we're still probably a little bit ways away from being able to shove 250 teens into one room. Okay, so they did go ahead and they canceled the area-wide for the month of June, but stay tuned with that and we'll see what kind of what comes about. As far as I know, nothing has been said any further about Horizons or Maywood. That's supposed to come maybe closer to the end of the month. As always, stay connected. We need you guys to stay connected on Facebook, on our website, on YouTube. Text somebody, call somebody, send a card, drive by, visit. Do anything that you can. If you have a need, if you need somebody to come see you, to talk, just to, for your own mental sanity, give me a call or Carrie, one of our deacons, one of our shepherds. We'd love to help you out. Also, if you are a graduate, I think I have all the high schools, most of the colleges, but if you are a college or high school graduate and you haven't gotten me back your form, please do so. Okay, I need those ASAP. All right. But I think that's all the announcements I've got. Guys, I really appreciate you guys sticking around, listening to these devotionals, staying on top of your spiritual well-being as well as your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. All those things are important. But ultimately, we want to be closer to God when all this is over. Okay? So until next week, I'll see you guys. Thank you so much. And remember that I love you, and so does God.